Surah Yusuf is the 12th chapter of the Qur'an, and it contains 111 verses, ayahs. It was revealed in Makkah, Meccan period, before the migration, Hijrah, to Medina, during a time when Prophet Muhammad was facing great hardship, rejection, and grief, especially around the period known as the Year of Sorrow. Allah revealed this surah to comfort and strengthen the Prophet, showing through the story of Prophet Yusuf that patience, faith, and trust in Allah eventually lead to success and relief after hardship. It is called Surah Yusuf because it mainly narrates the complete story of Prophet Yusuf, Joseph, from his childhood until his rise to power in Egypt. The surah describes how his brothers threw him into a well out of jealousy, how he was sold as a slave, falsely accused and imprisoned, and how Allah eventually raised him to honor and authority. The surah highlights themes such as patience, trust in Allah, forgiveness, wisdom, and how Allah's plan always prevails. It is unique in the Qur'an because the entire story of one prophet is told in a continuous and detailed narrative, and Allah calls it the best of stories. In the verses 1 to 18 of Surah Yusuf, Allah begins by mentioning the mysterious letters Alif Lam Ra, and then states that these are clear verses of the book that explain the truth. Allah tells that the Qur'an has been revealed in Arabic, so people can understand it clearly. Allah also says that He is telling the Prophet Muhammad the best of stories through revelation, because before receiving this revelation, the Prophet did not know these events. The story begins when Yusuf, Joseph, tells his father, Prophet Yaqub, Jacob, about a dream he saw. 11 stars, the sun and the moon were bowing down to him. His father immediately understands that this dream has a great meaning and future significance. Therefore he warns Yusuf not to tell his brothers about the dream because they might become jealous and plot against him, since Satan is a clear enemy of human beings. Prophet Yaqub also tells Yusuf that Allah will choose him, teach him the interpretation of dreams, and complete his blessings upon him and the family of Yaqub, just as he did with their forefathers, Ibrahim and Ishaq. This shows that Yusuf will have a special role and great honor from Allah. Allah then says that in the story of Yusuf and his brothers, there are many lessons for those who reflect. The brothers of Yusuf were already jealous. They complained that their father loved Yusuf and his younger brother more than them, even though they considered themselves stronger and more deserving. Because of this jealousy, they wrongly assumed that their father was mistaken in his preference. Their jealousy led them to discuss harmful plans. Some of them suggested killing Yusuf, while others proposed sending him far away so that their father would focus his love only on them. They even convinced themselves that after committing this sin, they could later become righteous. However, one brother suggested a less violent plan. Instead of killing Yusuf, they should throw him into a deep well, where passing travelers might pick him up. The brothers then went to their father and tried to persuade him to let Yusuf go out with them to play and enjoy himself, promising that they would protect him. Prophet Yaqub was hesitant and worried. He said it would make him sad to send Yusuf with them, and feared that a wolf might eat him while they were careless. The brothers insisted that since they were a strong group, such a thing would be impossible. Eventually they took Yusuf with them and threw him into the bottom of a well, carrying out their plan. At that moment, Allah reassured Yusuf through revelation that one day he would remind his brothers of what they had done, while they would not realize it. This was a promise that Allah would protect him and that the truth would eventually come out. Later that night, the brothers returned to their father crying falsely. They claimed that they had been racing and left Yusuf near their belongings and that a wolf had eaten him. To support their lie, they brought Yusuf's shirt with fake blood on it. However, Prophet Yaqub sensed the truth and said that their own souls had made them commit this deed. So instead of reacting with anger, he chose patience, placing his trust in Allah and seeking His help against the false story they were telling. In the verses 19 to 34 of Surah Yusuf, the story continues. After Yusuf was thrown into the well, a group of travelers passed by and sent a man to draw water. When he lowered his bucket into the well, he discovered Yusuf and happily announced the finding of a young boy. The travelers secretly kept him and treated him like merchandise to be sold, while Allah was fully aware of everything they were doing. They eventually sold Yusuf for a very small price, just a few pieces of silver, showing that they did not value him much. The person who bought him was a nobleman from Egypt. He told his wife to treat Yusuf well, and give him an honorable place in their home, thinking that he might become useful to them or that they might even adopt him as a son. In this way, Allah placed Yusuf in Egypt and began preparing him for a greater future, including teaching him the interpretation of dreams. This shows that Allah controls all matters, even when people do not realize it. When Yusuf grew to maturity, Allah blessed him with wisdom and knowledge, rewarding him because he was righteous and did good. However, a major test soon came. The wife of the man who owned the house became attracted to Yusuf and tried to seduce him. She locked the doors and invited him toward her, but Yusuf immediately refused and sought refuge in Allah, reminding her that her husband had treated him well and that wrongdoers never succeed. She strongly desired him, but Allah protected Yusuf because he saw the clear guidance and warning from his Lord. Allah turned away evil and immorality from him because Yusuf was a sincere servant of Allah. As Yusuf tried to escape, both of them rushed toward the door and she tore his shirt from behind. At that moment, they encountered her husband at the door. To protect herself, she falsely accused Yusuf and asked what punishment should be given to someone who intended evil toward his master's wife. Yusuf defended himself and said that she was the one who tried to seduce him. A witness from her family suggested a simple test. If Yusuf's shirt was torn from the front, then she was telling the truth. But if it was torn from the back, then Yusuf was truthful and she was lying. When the husband saw that the shirt was torn from behind, he realized that Yusuf was innocent and that his wife was lying. He told Yusuf to ignore the matter and instructed his wife to ask forgiveness from Allah because she had done wrong. However, the incident became the talk of the city. Some women began gossiping, criticizing the nobleman's wife for trying to seduce her servant and saying that she was clearly misguided because she had become deeply infatuated with him. When she heard about their gossip, she invited those women to a gathering and prepared food for them, giving each of them a knife. Then she asked Yusuf to appear before them. When the women saw his extraordinary beauty, they were so amazed that they accidentally cut their hands and exclaimed that he could not be a normal human, but seemed like a noble angel. The wife then admitted that Yusuf was the man they had blamed her about, and she openly confessed that she had tried to seduce him, but he resisted. She then threatened that if Yusuf did not obey her, he would certainly be imprisoned and humiliated. Faced with this pressure, Yusuf prayed to Allah, saying that prison was better for him than committing the sin they were inviting him to. He asked Allah to protect him from their plots, fearing that without Allah's help he might weaken. Allah answered his prayer and protected him from their schemes, for Allah hears and knows everything. In the verses 35 to 57 of Surah Yusuf, Allah narrates further. Even though Yusuf's innocence had become clear, the people still decided to imprison him for a period of time, mainly to avoid scandal and silence the issue. While in prison, 2 young men were also imprisoned with him. One of them said that he had seen a dream in which he was pressing grapes to make wine, while the other said he had seen himself carrying bread on his head and birds were eating from it. They asked Yusuf to explain their dreams because they saw that he was a righteous and good person. Before interpreting their dreams, Yusuf used the opportunity to teach them about the truth of faith. He told them that the knowledge he had came from Allah and explained that he had abandoned the religion of people who did not believe in Allah or the hereafter. Instead, he followed the faith of his forefathers Ibrahim, Ishaq, and Yaqub, which was the worship of one God without associating partners with him. Yusuf explained that worshipping many gods is false because those so-called gods are only names people invented, without any authority from Allah. He emphasized that judgment belongs only to Allah, and that the true religion is to worship Him alone, though many people fail to understand this. After explaining the message of monotheism, Yusuf interpreted their dreams. He told them that one of them would be released and would serve wine to his king again, while the other would be crucified, and birds would eat from his head. Yusuf said that the matter was already decided. Then he asked the one who would be freed to mention him to the king, hoping he might help secure his release. However, Satan caused the man to forget, and because of this, Yusuf remained in prison for several more years. Later, the king of Egypt had a troubling dream. He saw 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 thin cows, and 7 green ears of grain along with 7 dry ones. He asked his advisors to explain the dream, but they said it was only a confused dream, and that they did not know its meaning. At that moment, The former prisoner who had been released finally remembered Yusuf and told the king that someone in prison could interpret the dream. He went to Yusuf and asked him to explain the meaning. Yusuf explained that the dream meant there would be 7 years of abundant harvest, during which people should continue farming and store most of the grain while leaving it in the ears for preservation, except for a small amount to eat. After that would come 7 years of severe famine, which would consume the stored food except what was carefully saved. Then, after those difficult years, a year would come in which rain would return and people would again have plenty, including pressing grapes and producing goods. When the king heard this interpretation, he ordered that Yusuf be brought to him. However, Yusuf refused to leave prison immediately, and instead asked that the king investigate the case of the women who had cut their hands, because Allah knew the truth of what had happened. The king questioned the women, and they admitted that they had seen no wrongdoing from Yusuf. At that point, the chief's wife openly confessed that she had tried to seduce him, and that Yusuf had been truthful. Through this investigation, Yusuf's complete innocence and honesty were publicly proven. The woman also acknowledged that human beings are naturally inclined toward wrongdoing, unless Allah shows mercy. After this truth was established, the king ordered that Yusuf be brought to him. When he spoke with Yusuf, he recognized his intelligence and integrity, and told him that he would now hold a position of honor and trust. Yusuf then requested to be placed in charge of the treasures and storehouses of the land, explaining that he was trustworthy and knowledgeable in managing them. Allah thus granted Yusuf authority and position in Egypt, allowing him to act freely in the land. This showed how Allah's plan had unfolded. The boy who was once thrown into a well and sold as a slave was now given power and respect. Allah grants His mercy to whom He wills, and He never wastes the reward of those who do good. Finally, Allah reminds that the reward in the hereafter is far greater for those who believe and remain mindful of Him. In the verses 58 to 79 of Surah Yusuf, the story continues. During the years of famine, Yusuf's brothers came to Egypt to buy food. When they entered his court, Yusuf recognized them immediately, but they did not recognize him because many years had passed, and he was now a powerful official in Egypt. After providing them with the grain they needed, Yusuf asked them to bring another brother from their father, referring to his younger brother, Binyamin. He reminded them that he gives full measure and treats guests well, but warned that if they did not bring that brother next time, they would not receive any more provisions, nor be allowed to come again. The brothers promised that they would try to convince their father to allow him to come. Yusuf secretly instructed his servants to place the money the brothers had paid back into their bags, so that when they returned home and discovered it, they might be encouraged to come back again. When they reached their father, Prophet Yaqub, they told him that they would not be given grain again unless they brought their younger brother with them. Yaqub was hesitant and reminded them how he had trusted them with Yusuf before and lost him. However, he placed his trust in Allah as the best protector and the most merciful. When the brothers opened their bags and found their money returned, they became more eager to return to Egypt. They told their father that this was beneficial because their goods had been returned. They could bring food for their family again, and they would gain even more provisions. Still, Yaqub refused to send the younger brother, unless they swore a strong promise in Allah's name that they would bring him back safely unless they were completely overpowered. After they gave this pledge, Yaqub placed his trust in Allah regarding their promise. Before they left, Yaqub advised them not to enter the city through one single gate, but through different gates, perhaps to avoid attention or harm. However, he reminded them that such precautions cannot prevent Allah's decree, because all judgment belongs to Allah alone. When they entered Egypt as their father advised, it did not change Allah's plan, but it fulfilled Yaqub's concern. Yaqub had knowledge given by Allah, though most people do not understand such wisdom. When the brothers returned to Yusuf and brought their younger brother with them, Yusuf privately welcomed him and revealed his identity to him, saying, "I am your brother, so do not grieve over what they used to do." After preparing their provisions again, Yusuf arranged a plan. The king's drinking cup was secretly placed in his younger brother's bag. Then a caller announced that the caravan had stolen the cup. The brothers were shocked and insisted they had not come to cause corruption and were not thieves. The officials asked what the punishment should be if the thief were found among them. According to the brothers' own law, they said that whoever was found with the stolen item should remain as the penalty. The search began with the other brothers' bags and finally reached the bag of Yusuf's younger brother, where the cup was discovered. In this way, Allah's plan allowed Yusuf to keep his brother with him, because under the king's law, he could not normally detain him unless Allah willed it. This also showed that Allah raises people in rank according to His wisdom, and above every person of knowledge is the one who knows everything. When the brothers saw this, they tried to defend themselves, but also said that if this brother had stolen, another brother of his had stolen before, referring to Yusuf. Yusuf kept his feelings hidden and did not reveal the truth to them. Instead, he calmly told them that Allah knew the reality of what they were claiming. The brothers then pleaded with Yusuf, explaining that the young boy had an elderly father who loved him deeply, and they asked that one of them be kept instead of him. However, Yusuf refused, saying it would be unjust to punish anyone except the one in whose bag the cup was found. The verses 80 to 98 of Surah Yusuf explains, when Yusuf refused to release his younger brother after the cup was found in his bag, the brothers became hopeless and moved aside to discuss the situation privately. The eldest brother reminded them that their father had taken a solemn promise in Allah's name that they would bring the younger brother back safely, and he also reminded them of how they had previously failed with Yusuf. Because of this guilt, he decided that he would not return home until his father allowed it, or until Allah judged the matter. He told the others to return to their father and explained that the younger brother had been accused of theft and that they could only testify to what they had seen, since they could not know the unseen. They also told them to confirm their story by asking the people of the town and the caravan they had traveled with, assuring that they were telling the truth. When they returned and told their father, Prophet Yaqub, he again felt that their souls had led them into wrongdoing. However, he chose patience, hoping that Allah might one day bring all of his sons back together, because Allah is all-knowing and wise. Overwhelmed with grief, Yaqub turned away and cried out in sorrow for Yusuf. His grief was so deep that his eyes became white. He lost his sight from sadness. Yet he continued to suppress his pain within himself. His sons told him that he kept remembering Yusuf so much that it might make him ill or lead to his death. Yaqub replied that he only complained of his sorrow to Allah, and that he knew from Allah something they did not know. Despite the years that had passed, Yaqub still had hope. He told his sons to go back and search for Yusuf and his brother, and not to despair of Allah's mercy, because only disbelievers lose hope in Allah's mercy. When the brothers returned to Egypt and came before Yusuf again, they explained that hardship had struck them and their family, and that they had brought only a small amount of money. They asked him to give them full measure of food and show charity, reminding that Allah rewards those who are charitable. At that moment, Yusuf asked them if they remembered what they had done to Yusuf and his brother when they were ignorant. The brothers suddenly realized the truth and asked in amazement whether he was really Yusuf. Yusuf confirmed that he was Yusuf, and the one with him was his brother, and he explained that Allah had been gracious to them. He also taught that whoever remains patient and mindful of Allah will never lose the reward of their good deeds. The brothers admitted their mistake and said that Allah had clearly chosen Yusuf above them, acknowledging that they had been sinners. Instead of blaming them, Yusuf forgave them and said there would be no reproach against them that day, praying that Allah would forgive them, for He is the most merciful. Yusuf then gave them his shirt and told them to place it over their father's face so that his sight would return, and asked them to bring their entire family to Egypt. As the caravan carrying the shirt departed, Yaqub sensed something and said that he could smell the scent of Yusuf, though others thought he was mistaken because of his long grief. When the bearer of the good news arrived and placed the shirt over Yaqub's face, his eyesight immediately returned. Yaqub then reminded them that he had told them he knew from Allah what they did not know. Finally, the brothers asked their father to seek forgiveness from Allah for their sins. Yaqub promised that he would ask his Lord to forgive them, for Allah is the forgiving and the merciful. The verses 99 to 111 of Surah Yusuf, when Yusuf's family arrived in Egypt, he warmly welcomed them and brought his parents to live with him, telling them to enter Egypt in peace and safety by Allah's will. Yusuf then raised his parents to a position of honor, and his parents and brothers bowed in respect before him. At that moment, Yusuf explained to his father that this was the fulfillment of the dream he had seen in his childhood, when the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed to him. He recognized that Allah had been extremely kind to him, rescuing him from prison, reuniting him with his family after many years, and removing the hatred that Satan had placed between him and his brothers. Yusuf acknowledged that Allah carries out his plans with wisdom and kindness. Yusuf then prayed humbly to Allah, thanking him for granting him authority and knowledge, especially the interpretation of dreams. He declared that Allah is the creator of the heavens and the earth, and asked that Allah remain his protector in this world and the hereafter. He also prayed that he die as a Muslim, in submission to Allah, and be joined with the righteous. Allah then tells the Prophet Muhammad that this story is knowledge of the unseen revealed by Allah, because the Prophet was not present when Yusuf's brothers planned their plot against him. Allah also states that most people will not believe, even if the Prophet strongly wishes for them to believe, and the Prophet is not asking them for any reward for delivering this message, because the Qur'an is simply a reminder for all mankind. Allah points out that there are many signs in the heavens and the earth, yet people pass by them without reflecting on them. Many people claim to believe in Allah, but still associate partners with him, which is a form of disbelief. Allah warns that people should not feel safe from his punishment, or assume that the day of judgment will not come suddenly while they are unaware. The Prophet is then commanded to declare that his path is to call people to Allah with clear knowledge and certainty, along with those who follow him, and that he does not associate any partners with Allah. Allah also reminds people that the messengers sent before were human beings from among the people who received revelation. If people reflect on history and travel through the land, they can see how previous nations who rejected the truth eventually faced destruction. The reward of the hereafter is far better for those who remain righteous and mindful of Allah. Allah further explains that sometimes the situation becomes so difficult that even the messengers feel that people have completely rejected them, but Allah's help eventually comes, saving those whom He wills, while His punishment falls upon the guilty. Finally, Allah concludes that in these stories are powerful lessons for people of understanding. The story is not a made-up tale. Rather, it confirms earlier revelations and clearly explains many truths. The Qur'an is therefore a guidance and mercy for those who believe.